Debate in Montville. Appreciate everyone coming out tonight. It'll also be available starting tomorrow on theday.com. We are filming and recording the debate tonight. And our debate participants are to your left, the Montville Mayor incumbent, Ron McDaniel. And to your right, the Republican challenger and the chairman of the Town Council, Tom McNally. I want to thank the Board of Education, Principal San Germano, Superintendent Lori Palin for allowing us to use this great facility for tonight's debate. So we're going to be doing something different tonight in Montville, and I was talking to people earlier that maybe it'll become a model for some of the other towns. We're going to utilize some of the students here at Montville High School in asking the questions of our candidate. They will be the future of our democracy, so I think that's a good idea to get them involved. They had discussions in their classes, and we communicated with email in coming up with questions concerning their town of Montville. And our student participants, starting on your left, are senior Ashley Selden. And in the middle, Lily Carice. And next to me, Zoe Melton. So maybe a little applause for our students willing to come up here and ask the questions. Okay, the format we're going to use tonight is the candidates will get 90 seconds to issue their opening statements and introduce themselves. Then we'll go to questions, which will alternate back and forth. The candidate getting a question will have a minute to respond. His opponent will get 90 seconds to respond and rebut. And then the person who took the question to begin with gets another 30 seconds to sum up. Then we can move on to another question. So with that, by a coin flip, make sure I get it right, the opening statement will be from Mayor McDaniel. And Mayor, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, and thank you all for coming tonight. I'd like to give a special thanks to Paul Chenier from the Day, the League of Women Voters, the Board of Education, and especially the high school student body for sponsoring this event. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Ron McDaniel, and I'm seeking re-election to the office of Mayor of Montville. I've been married to my high school sweetheart for 31 years, and we have two good sons, Joe and Tommy, who graduated right here from Montville High School, and they both graduated UConn like their dear old dad. As many of you may know, I've been actively involved in our community since I came here. I have held the offices of probate judge, town council, and zoning board of appeals. I have served on various school committees, including the tile assistant principal search and the school improvements building committee. I have significant private business sector experience, as well as a master's degree in public administration. Montville has faced some challenges to our tax base since I took office 8 years ago, no doubt about that. We have lost AES Thames, West Rock, and Faria. But through all that, I've still maintained a stable tax base. What you really need to decide this year is who has the education, real-world work experience, and common sense to continue to move the town of Montville forward for the next 4 years. I thank you for all your support.
Thank you. Mr. McNally, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank the Day paper, the League of Women Voters, the Montville Board of Education for organizing tonight's debate. But most especially, I'd like to thank our current council here on the school board. For the last 2 years, I've had the honor and privilege to serve as your council chairman. And as council leader, I'm proud to say my agenda to make Montville a better place to live and to raise a family was successful. The introduction of a new tax policy brought in millions in back taxes. The Board of Ed and all town departments were fully funded. We purchased new town vehicles, which included 8 new school buses. We brought to referendum a bonding package to repave a third of the roads, and we purchased open space, just to name a few. This was all accomplished while keeping tax increases to bare minimums. As your next mayor, I promise to work closely with all the department heads to maintain and develop cost-effective and efficient departments. I will work with the CBIA and the Montville EDC to attract new businesses and to promote economic growth, and I will, I present reasonable budgets requested to the council for their approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I meant to point out early, and I'll do that now before we go to questions, your timekeepers, they're right down in front. If the mayor's timekeeper kind of hold up a card just so he knows where to look. And Mr. McNally, if the timekeeper, Mr. McNally could. So our timekeepers will hold up cards showing at different periods how much time you have left, and then eventually a stop sign, at which point, if you could please wrap up. So I just wanted to point that out. And with that, the first question is going to come from Ashley Selden, and it is to Mayor McDaniel.
If elected mayor, would you support an end to the resident trooper arrangement, giving Montville its own independent police department and police chief?
Thank you for that question, Ashley. I have continuously through the years supported an independent police department. The resident state trooper program works very well. We had some terrific resident state troopers over the years, but the time has come that we've outgrown that model. As we've seen with a couple of our neighbors, Ledyard and East Lyme, they realized that it was time to go to an independent police department. We were very smart and fortunate enough to have the town support a new facility. So we have the infrastructure in place to go ahead and do that. Right now, it costs us about $181,000 for a resident state trooper. Certainly, we can get a police chief for that. The other biggest cost that came out of the independent police department study was the cost of some new radios. We've softened some of those costs already. But the biggest cost, and it was about $306,000 over the cost of running the department now from a resident trooper department to an independent police department, about $360,000. Most of that cost was in dispatchers, about $250,000 of that cost. We've already hired one additional dispatcher, so I think we've already gotten past some of that hurdle too. And I see my stop sign is on.
All right, thank you. Mr. McNally, you have 90 seconds.
Great, thank you. This is definitely a hot topic that's been asked quite often. It's eventually going to happen one way or another. Like the mayor stated, we have taken a few steps in that direction currently. This council has added a dispatcher, which is a step in the right direction. We've completed the impound lot. What we need to do now is find people to come to town to grow our tax base. Unfortunately, going independent is going to cost extra money, and at this point in time, people have voted down several times at referendum. So I don't think that it's something we're going to do immediately, but it's something that we'll need to do in the future. Thank you.
And you get another 30 seconds on this one.
Thank you. I did go past my stop sign a little bit there before, but again, I think the difference in the operating costs between one model and the other has shrunk a little bit. So I think moving forward, maybe people will be more palatable to moving to an independent police department. It certainly gives us more local control. You really have a face of a police chief in the community and not a resident trooper who may come and go and be called to other towns and communities to do work. So I think we're pretty much in agreement on that.
All right, thank you. Our second question is from Lily Carice. I can take it over to you.
Okay. Mr. McNally, last year the town council, with you as chairman, made an additional $246,000 cut to the approved Board of Education budget proposal, overriding a veto by Mayor McDaniel to do so. If elected, Mr. McNally, do you expect to be tougher in controlling education spending than the current mayor?
Thank you. So just a little history. I spent 8 years on the Board of Education, so I've been on both sides of this ticket. I understand what they need. I understand what they want. They presented a budget to us, which was their want. We as a council sat down and felt that we were able to fund it. We gave them additional increase. Their budget was not cut. They actually had a 2.7% increase over what they asked for. We still need to work with them and make sure we have the best school system in the town of Montville, which we currently do, and we need to keep it that way. But it comes at a cost, and we have to make sure that it's affordable for everybody in the town of Montville. We have a lot of seniors in this town that can't afford huge tax cuts, so it's not something we can just give them anything they want. But again, they were increased in their funding. They were not cut, and we actually spent over $1 million in these past 2 years in capital improvements to the school, which has not been done in the past 15 years. Thank you.
Mayor McDaniel, you get 90 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I did veto that cut because I thought it was too deep. And in meeting with the administration, they told me that they really didn't think that they could absorb that kind of cut. Fortunately, they were able to find some other savings when some other unexpected retirements came about. But the real problem with education funding is certainly things like special education, where money should follow the child from system to system, and we're not always faced with chasing that kind of funding at the end of the year when we don't know what those costs are really going to be. I mean, one student could be $200,000 to the district and could wipe out your whole budget plan in one shot. But our net expenditures per pupil have gone up from 2015, to 2017. They went up about $1,200 per student. So we're spending money on education, no question about it. But it's also the biggest part of the budget. It's 63% of the budget in this town. Now, in a $61 million budget, that's $38.7 million just that goes to our education budget. So we really have to be careful and watch what we're doing. There are smart ways to approach it. The Board of Education is always finding creative ways to do things, and we'll continue to support the education budget because I think, listen, you're the future. If we don't support you, we're doomed ourselves. So thank you.
Mr. McNally, you get another 30 seconds before we move on to another question.
Sure. It's just to recover that also is one of our disadvantages here is up in Hartford as the Democrats have cut the ECS funding for us. But in addition to that happening and still giving them more than they requested, we also put another $321,000 into the reserve fund so that if there's an issue down the road, if there's a special education issue, a school maintenance issue, they now have a reserve account that they can pull off of. So I think the school system is in a pretty good place right now, and obviously we'll keep working with them in the future. Thank you.
Before we move to another question, just to clarify, Mr. McNally, you said that you gave them 2.7% more than they asked for. Did you mean that, or did you mean you gave them 2.7% more than the prior year spending?
2.7% over what they were getting the previous year.
All right, thank you. All right, our next question, and this one begins with Mr. McNally, and it comes from Zoe Melton.
Is there one positive thing that each of you can say about your opponent's leadership?
Very good question. Thank you. That's a great question. Mr. McDaniel is a very good leader. You want to ask that again?
Is there one positive thing that each of you can say about your opponent's leadership?
So again, Mr. McDaniel is a nice guy. Don't get me wrong. I don't always agree with his leadership style. However, he does have the best interest of the town of Montville most of the time. And so even though we disagree on a lot of things, we do agree on some.
Mayor McDaniel.
Yeah, thank you, Zoe. Yeah, I'll say this: Tom is certainly passionate about the town. He loves the town as much as I do, and I not only have the best interest of the town some of the time, I have the best interest of this town all of the time. I constantly put this town ahead of my family, my other work requirements, everything. So that being said, again, I think Tom is very passionate. He's been involved with the town for a long time. He was born and raised here. And you know what? I think no matter what happens, whatever the outcome of this election is, I'm sure he'll be around to try to make a difference. So.
I don't know if there's more to add, but you get another 30 seconds.
I don't really have more to add.
All right. And the next question goes to Mayor McDaniel, and it's from Ashley.
In Montville, there are many dangerous intersections and unsafe roads for pedestrians. There are also very few sidewalks. What would you do to improve pedestrian safety?
So right now, we actually have a pedestrian safety grant that we received from the state. We were turned down for it at first. It's about $368,000, I believe, to address the intersection of Route 163 and Route 32, which is a really, really poor area. And there are a lot of pedestrians that walk through that area. The problem with the way the town had developed over the years is there was no plans for sidewalks, and there were no room for sidewalks. But as new developments are coming online, as new neighborhoods are coming online, the planning and zoning regulations do include sidewalks in those areas. We're also trying to look for more multimodal type of access for people with the addition of possibly some bike paths, some multi-use paths, and certainly law enforcement has a big responsibility in this area as well. So they need to make sure that we are monitoring those intersections. I get calls all the time about it, and we do as much selective enforcement as we can to try to keep those intersections safe as well.
So now you get 90 seconds to talk about this topic.
Great. Thank you, Ashley. Yes, so Montville is a rural town. Unfortunately, we do have some issues in that category. I'm pretty proud to say, as chairman of the Public Works Committee, that I've worked really well with our Public Works Director. We've currently doubled the funding we did for removing trees and clearing sight lines, which will help improve that. I would actively pursue grants to continue the sidewalk program that we have. Like the mayor stated, there is programs in place as new developments come on that we do put in sidewalks. So it's definitely something that we'll keep pursuing through the town of Montville. Thanks.
And Ms. McDaniel, if you want to further.
Sure. I'd just like to clarify that the name of the grant was actually called the Community Connectivity Grant, and it was for $378,000 that I was able to get, along with the rest of grants totaling about $11 million for this community.
All right, next question goes to Mr. McNally, and it's from Lily Crease.
What have you done to attract businesses to town, and what would you do as mayor in the next term?
Great question, thank you. So that's our number one goal here in Montville, is to attract businesses. I've been working with the EDC, which is in charge of bringing business to the town of Montville. I've actually met with the tribe, with Chuck Bunnell. We've talked to him about the people that can't afford the real estate inside the casino, that possibly can get a list so that we can actively pursue them to come outside of the casino. I'd work with the CBIA, Connecticut Business Industrial Association. But I think the real thing for Montville, what we need to do is market the town. And the way to do that is it's going to take money to you got to spend money to make money. So we may have to do some marketing with a marketing firm, possibly do videos, send it out to other areas like Boston and New York where the big developers are, and market Montville as a wonderful town to come to. We do have the second largest casino in the area. We are between two big cities, New London and Norwich, so it's an attractive place to have business. We just need to market the town to make sure we can get them here. Thanks.
And Mayor McDaniel, question, what have you done to attract business to town, and what would you do if reelected?
Sure. I have reached out to many developers and met with many developers, and some come in with some really, really cool, crazy, huge ideas that just don't come to pass. We've had a number of deals on the drive-in property that have fallen through due to financing issues, and it's never a zoning issue. It's never one of those things where we're trying to stymie anything. Right now, though, we have an opportunity up on Mohegan Hill for a data center campus, which could really, really change the dynamics of not only this community, but southeastern Connecticut. In fact, Connecticut. We're halfway between New York and Boston. The data latency in this area is ripe for that kind of development. We have people putting together, but these are multi-billion-dollar deals. They don't happen overnight. The biggest hindrance to economic development, it's not videos, it's not brochures, it's infrastructure. So if you don't have water, sewer, gas, and electricity in the amounts that the people need them, there's no development that's coming. They're just not. They don't go over to the Chesterfield side of town because there's no gas over there. There's no sewers and there's no water over there. So right now, the Mohegan Hill is the most valuable piece of property in town to do any development. And I've been meeting with these developers for 8 years now, trying to get this to happen. They just closed on the Wernicke property on September 26th. So now they have access into the back of the property off of Route 32. So they have their curb cut there, and they're going to be purchasing some more properties, which shows me, you know what, it looks like they're for real. So we've been working with them at planning and zoning. They've gotten all their approvals to date, and we're streamlining their processes. Thank you.
Mr. McNally, you get another 30 seconds on this topic.
Yeah, so one of the things I'd have to disagree with is he keeps talking about expanding the water and sewer. We have water, sewer, and gas on Route 32. It's our main corridor. It's where people are going to want to build, and they still don't come here. So it's not a problem with the utilities. It's a problem with marketing the town. One of my disappointments is he doesn't have any leadership with the EDC. He shows up once a year, gives them a report. He doesn't have the planning and zoning department working with them. Unfortunately, it's a committee that really doesn't get to do anything because they have no leadership and no guidance as to what it is they're supposed to be doing for the town of Montville. So I'd like to work with the EDC in the future and make sure that their talents are utilized. Thank you.
I'm going to give our candidates another minute. It seems to be a topic we have some disagreement. You challenged your leadership on economic development and says we have the utilities in place here in Montville that we need. Can you respond to that, and the candidate will have a minute?
Sure, I'll agree that we do have those resources on Route 32 corridor, but that's the only place that we have them. I think we need to expand them to other areas of town so that other areas of town can be ripe for development. I also add that between 2013 and 2018, Montville in the COG region added more commercial space than any other town at 268,000 square feet. Okay, that's in a report on from the Joint Land Use Study Committee. It's not some number that I've made up. It's also the least costly at $19 a square foot to build that out. Our average average commercial lease prices are $11 a square foot, which is completely average for the region at this time. So I think that we need to expand that infrastructure some. There's going to be need in other areas. Once we start getting those 2 big blocks on 32 done, there's nowhere left to go on 32. We need to look at the other parts of town.
And Ms. McNally, I'll give you a minute. So you don't think there needs to be an expansion of utilities, and why or why not?
I didn't say there shouldn't be an expansion. I just don't agree with the Route 85 area. First of all, that road is already congested. If you go by in the summertime, you just don't move. It's gridlocked. There's already commercial development over there. It's industrial, and that's a perfect area for it. If you're going to expand utilities, it should be somewhere in the Galvin Lane area. There's a bunch of industrial lots down there. There's already water and sewer on the road, so to expand them would be very minimal. To run a water line to the other side of town is almost impossible. Right now, our water ends at 163 and Route 32, so go across the other side of town, the cost of that would be phenomenal. So I don't see that being practical anytime soon.
All right, thank you. The next question is from Zoe Melton, and it's to Mayor McDaniel.
Your opponent contends the council, under his leadership, deserves credit for aggressively going after overdue taxes, bringing in approximately $4 million. Had your administration been doing an inadequate job in this regard?
Well, certainly they have been very aggressive. We got a new tax collector who's got some new methodology that she's been using as well. But the bulk of that money came from the Mohegan Hill property. And that was done before these policies were even put in place. So take that part off the top. But yeah, they've been very aggressive in going after those policies. And we did not have a policy in place before where we were doing tax sales. They put a number of foreclosures out there. We're still trying to get people out of those, some of those homes. It's a difficult thing. People are having a hard time paying their taxes. So yeah, they get owed. There's no waiver fees. Nobody gets a free pass on them. But we're trying to work with people as best we can. So I'll just say that about that.
And Mr. McNally, could you talk about the topic of collecting overdue taxes?
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, I'd have to disagree with him. He talks about the Tarragon property coming in before that. The Tarragon property was just paid last year. Your own David Collins did a wonderful story on it, where the mayor said he had no answers as to why it wasn't paid, said that there was no policy in place for it, and that it was before his administration. It goes on for 2 pages about how that's playing favorites with tax deadbeats was the article's title. We came in, we found out that there was all these properties that had not paid in almost 10 years, had not paid their taxes. We changed the tax policy, and immediately, Tarragon being one of the first ones, came in and paid off right off the bat. He called the policy draconian. Tarragon paid. He said, well, let's see if the check bounces. If you've been working with them for 6 years and you knew they're going to pay, why would you say that? It's because of this policy that we brought in the money. We did the first tax sale in 43 years since 1975. We have a few left, but we're actually bringing in the money, and it's under our leadership that's why that happened. Thank you.
Mayor, if we could try to hold the applause till the end. Mayor McDaniel, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Well, one thing David Collins also said was that my wife's uncle must be involved with the property, which is why I was not doing anything about it. So I'll just leave that there because we know how David writes. So listen, that money was coming in. It came in before this tax policy came in. That's a fact. You couldn't even name the people probably that are involved with that property. They've been in my home having coffee, trying to negotiate some of these things out. I've met with them all over the state. I've helped them with the state to try to get some grant money as well for some of the projects. And yeah, you guys have been aggressively going after the taxes.
Thank you.
I can't say there was any reason that the town wasn't before.
Thank you. The next question is from Ashley Selden, and it's to Tom McNally.
We are living in a time where our national leaders insult one another and fight like immature teenagers. As mayor, how would you work with the opposing party for the benefit of all Montville residents?
Thank you, Ashley. I think we've shown a good demonstration that we are able to do that. We don't always agree at meetings. We have some discussions, but it's always been civil. On a town level here, I think once the election's over, everybody works together. It's really not like the state and federal levels, which is a lot more aggressive. Everybody here lives here. Everything we do affects everybody in the town of Montville. Obviously, Ron's going to want to do what's best for the town of Montville. We just have different ways of doing it. But after the elections, we get along. We've had a great 2 years together. A lot of good stuff has happened, and pretty proud of that. So, thank you.
Mayor?
Sure, I'm sure everybody will be shocked to hear this, but I agree with Tom. At the end of the day, when you look at the votes that happen on the town council and what goes on, most of this stuff is routine. It's 7-0 votes, it's 6-1 votes. We're all trying to do the right thing. Sometimes we have different ways of getting there. We have different ways of looking at it, but it's not like what's going on at the national level. It's certainly not what it's going on at the state level. This is where the rubber really meets the road. This is where things get done. This is where potholes get fixed, trees get cut down, schools get funded, buildings get built. This is where those kinds of things happen. We're not talking about, you know, abortion and gun control and impeachment and those kinds of things, thankfully. So I think that I don't see any way that no matter who gets in this time that anything will change. I think the 7 councilors and the mayor will continue to work together to do what's the best for all the townspeople.
You got another 30 seconds. You want to comment on that exchange?
No, I pretty much unfortunately agree with him on all that. You know, again, it's all different ideas. In the past, we have been piecemeal the road repairs, $900,000 a year, and we came along and said that's not working. We changed it around, and we took out a bond which passed 2/3 by the townspeople, and we appreciate that. Thank you. And so we just do things differently. But again, at the end of the day, we get along. We all live here and work here and have families here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Lily Carice, do you have a question for Mr. McDaniel?
Was the $220,000 purchase of the 30-acre property off 163 a good investment for the town? If so, why? If not, why not?
Yeah, I think it was a good investment for the town. I think some things could have been handled a little differently in the way it was done. But yeah, I think it adds to the open space that we have in town. It's a good piece to add to Camp Oakdale, which is a true gem, and a lot of people don't utilize. It's underutilized. So this gives a good opportunity for some more passive recreation areas. However, in the normal course of things, I would have liked to have it surveyed first and maybe, you know, a market analysis done on it to see what the property was worth, just to make sure that the townspeople, because it's their money, was being spent in a prudent manner. Other than that, it's a good property for the town to have. It's going to be a good addition to the property up there.
Mr. McNally, you have up to 90 seconds to talk about the topic.
Yep, so this also has been a topic that a lot of people have asked about. The purchase price of the property we think was very fair. It was originally on the market 10 years ago for over $800,000. It had come down to roughly, I think it was $420,000, $440,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. We were asked to take a look at it because Camp Oakdale would have been landlocked if it was sold to a developer. We looked at it, we thought it was a nice piece of property. We actually walked it. It's 30 acres, there's approximately 14 acres of it, it's wetlands, based on the old survey. Everybody keeps talking about, well, it's worth $90,000. The $90,000, it's what's assessed as farmland. That's their assessment from the tax collector for 90 grand. I don't know who's buying acreage cheaper than what we just paid for 30 acres. So I wouldn't argue about the price. I think it was a great deal for the town. It was purchased for future use, no increase to taxes for purchasing it. And again, with Camp Oakdale, if it was landlocked, we'd have a bigger problem. Right now, we have room to expand. Walking fields, more ball fields, pretty much anything we want. Currently doing a study for it right now. So I look forward to when that's done, and then the Parks and Rec Commission's tasked with what they're going to do up there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, you get another 30 seconds because you took the question.
Yeah, you know what? Thank you, Paul. I don't really have anything to add. Like I said, I think it's always good to have more open space in town, and adding it to something that we already have, I think made a lot of sense. And again, we can argue about the value of what we paid for it. It's done. We've got to move on.
All right, next question goes to Mr. McNally, and it's from Zoe Melton.
A year ago, the council substantially increased transfer station fees. Was this the right move? Can candidates make a commitment to oppose additional increases in the next term?
Great question. So the transfer station for several years now has been being abused and losing money. When I became chairman of the Public Works Solid Waste Committee, I asked the Public Works Director what we could do about it. He presented several different options. One of them was the pay-per-bag system. We had numerous public hearings on that, and it did not go over well. People were not fans of that. So we went back and we revisited the idea and figured out what else could we do to change it. One of the big problems we had was people abusing the system. They would buy one sticker from multiple family members. There'd be somebody who owned a trailer park who would go around and collect all the trash from all the trailers and bring it under one sticker. By raising the fees, changing the policy to 8-bag limit, and doing a barcode system, we have seen that work out really well. One of the issues with the trailer park guy went out and bought a dumpster. So it's actually had a great effect. People don't seem to be too upset about it, and our fees are still way less than any town around us. Thank you.
Mayor McDaniel, get 90 seconds to talk about this.
Sure. First thing, I mean, we certainly heard our share of complaints when this happened. Are the fees unreasonable? Probably not relative to everybody else's. The thing about trash is this, that really the bag system is probably the fairest way to go, because each per capita person in this town generates about 800 pounds of trash per year. So if you generate 400, and you should be paying half of what somebody else should be paying, because it's not costing the town that much. It's costing them half to get rid of it. So with my participation on the Southeastern Connecticut Resource Recovery Authority, which I'm a member, we've negotiated a new deal for a new place to bring our trash. We're going to be bringing it to Lisbon. That'll be on the agenda shortly for the town council to consider. That'll save us $17 a ton over the next 10 years. That's approximately $2.7 million just in trash disposal fees. So you have to keep the costs in line when you're looking at things at the transfer station. That being said, too, the town people don't get a lot for their tax dollars, and that was everybody felt was one of the perks that they get, that if they use the transfer station, it was at a very, very low cost to them. We also put $1 million into that transfer station with grants. It is one of the model transfer stations, if not the model transfer station in the state of Connecticut. Now, I don't get to set the fees. Tom wouldn't get to set the fees if he's mayor. That would be up to the council to decide that. So you'll have to address that to the council members when you get a chance to ask them.
And you get another 30 seconds on this,
Yeah,
Mr. McNally?
just to agree with him, the paper bag system is the fairest. Unfortunately, after the numerous public hearings, the public wasn't convinced of that.
Nobody
tried.
likes it, Tom. Nobody.
We tried. But the problem we had is a third of the people in town use the transfer station, a third of the people in town pay for private haulers. The other third was the question. They were the ones that were piggybacking, and there was a lot of abuse. Our transfer station employees knew it. They're the ones that pointed out. Just to say they do a fantastic job down there at the transfer station. But this new policy does seem to be working, and so we're pretty pleased with it. And again, the fee increase was very minimal, and it's still way up, under what other towns charge.
Thank you. If I could just take a minute each, let me start with Mayor McDaniel, just on the same topic since we're on it. Some towns have gone beyond the 10-cent plastic bag tax that the state has imposed to try to discourage use of single-use plastic bags. Some towns have outright banned the bags, banned plastic straws, these kind of steps. I was wondering if either our candidates have any opinions as that was anything they might propose to the council if they were elected mayor. If you could just kind of talk about that, Mayor McDaniel.
So, without going too far overboard, I think it's really up to the state to take the lead on that. Yeah, the towns can do it individually, but then you just go in the next town and you get in the bags or you're getting the straw. So without a statewide policy, are we really affecting any true change in that? There is a meeting that we're having at the Council of Governments next week where there's an environmental lawyer coming down to discuss a lot of these issues on, again, it's how to reduce, recycle, reuse as much of the waste stream as we possibly can. And part of that is getting away from any of these single-use items. It's also a matter of getting the manufacturers to do more stewardship and getting rid of the hard plastics and using more cardboard. If you go to Oakdale Pizza now, you get your grinder in a nice little cardboard box. You don't get it in that clamshell styrofoam container anymore. So I think some of the restaurateurs and store owners are already taking a proactive approach in that area.
Ms. McNally, your thoughts on whether Montville should consider going beyond what the state is now requiring?
Sure. So just for the record, I'm not a fan of this bag tax. It drives me nuts. I never seem to have my reusable bag with me. But however, it has worked. Stores have started banning the plastic bags. So for the environment, it's a great thing. I don't think that on the town level, it's something we need to worry about, again, because most places have already shied away from it now anyhow. So I think as time goes on, I think more and more businesses are going to get away from the plastic bag. Most people aren't paying for them at this point, so I think it's kind of solved the problem on a state level versus the town level. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We can move on to another topic now, and the question will be coming from Ashley Selden.
If elected, how would you work to get a greater share of casino revenues for Montville?
Who's that for?
And that's, I'm sorry, from Mayor McDaniel.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. It's a fight we have every day, we go to the legislature every year at budget time and fight and fight and fight and fight. And we go to the tribe and fight. And it's really not the tribe's responsibility to give us more of the Mohegan Pequot Fund. The way they have this fund set up, they tie it into all other kind of grant funding so that if they give you a little more in Mohegan Pequot money, they take away from your pilot money, payment in lieu of tax money, or they'll take it out of some other grant, your LoCIP grant. So they tie it all together, so at the end of the day, they're not giving you any more money out of that fund. Now, our argument has perennially been, we're an impacted host community. Now, I'm sorry to the Bridgeports and Stanfords and Hartfords and whatever, but let me ask you, what impact has the Mohegan Sun Casino really had in Bridgeport? Did they have to hire any more firemen? Did they have to hire any more policemen? Did they have to buy any police cars? Did they have to widen any roads? Did they have to do anything, put in any sidewalks? Of course they hadn't. But they're getting the lion's share of the money out of the fund. And the reason for that was because the deal was brokered back in the day.
I'm sorry, Mayor, your time's up. You'll get another 30 seconds, so keep that in mind. You got 90 seconds on this one, which I think comes up every debate I'm in Montville.
Yes, so again, great question. We have to just be vigilant and keep working with our state legislators. They were able to get an extra $500,000 this year for us, but we're still getting less than 2% of the fund. Less than 2%. We're a host town. Like the mayor stated, we have domestics, larcenies, all kinds of stuff at the hotels as a result from the casino being here. We have increased traffic as a result of that. So there's definitely a burden on our services for the fire and police, and we're just not getting our fair share of it. So we just have to keep going after them. It's always the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. Every single time you go up to Hartford, just keep lobbying for it. Whether it works or not, we won't know, but we just got to keep trying. Thanks.
And you get that additional 30 seconds to finish your thoughts.
I think my train had derailed there for a second, but so yeah, the original deal was when they went up there and met with Weicker and the rest of them that, look, nobody, Bridgeports and New Havens and Hartfords and Waterburys were not going to get a casino so they could get the lion's share of that Mohegan Pequot Fund. And once again, the state of Connecticut is going to turn around and break the deal that they made with this town. And it's shameful, and I don't think we should tolerate it, and we shall continue to go up there and fight for every dollar we're entitled to.
All right, thank you. Again, if we could hold applause right to the end, I appreciate that. Our next question, and it's for Mr. McNally, comes from Lily Carice.
Do you have any ideas for increasing the number of citizens, both young and old, who vote and participate in their local government?
Well, we've tried several different approaches. Unfortunately, people just don't get engaged as far as local politics. We have posted just about every event in town, both town council meetings and other meetings on social media. We've done a ton of advertising. Unfortunately, it's kind of like everything else. People's lives are so busy, they just don't have the time to get involved. Every organization you go to, whether it be the Boy Scouts, the Rotary, volunteers are leaving, the volunteer fire departments are having trouble filling people, so people just don't have the time. We'll continue to keep marketing it, keep talking to our friends and neighbors, do the best we can, but it's just one of those things that there's only so much time in the day and people are limited. Thank you.
Ms. McDaniel.
So I'm sorry about this, Paul, but there's going to be a shameless plug for your paper, but there was an editorial today about changing perhaps the election year to even-numbered years and seeing if that would have an effect on voter turnout and voter participation. When you get just a municipal election only, you're looking at turnout in the 30s. They're talking about perhaps going to just every even year and coinciding these elections with other state office elections, and hopefully that would garner more more voter turnout. I think there was a pretty good argument made that, that would probably benefit the Democrats more than Republicans, and I don't think that there's any appetite right now in the legislature to try to do something like that. But Denise Merrill has an idea. Let's see if she actually floats something out to the legislature this year and see if they can try to do something different to try to get people to be more participatory in their democracy.
Mayor, introduce something new into that. You got another 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, again, 30% turnout is pretty low. What happens here on the local level affects everybody. What happens on the state level, not so much, it's statewide. Trying to get people out, it's not an easy task. I don't know there's a simple answer to that, to get them out. I know if we had something on there, a referendum question for chickens or trash, we'd get a big turnout. But other than that, people just don't come out to vote. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question goes to Mr. McDaniel, and I believe it's from Zoe Melton.
If prospective buyers asked you to name the top 3 reasons why they should consider moving to Montville, what would you say?
Well, first of all, I would say our school system. That's why I moved here. I think that when my wife and I were actively searching for a home, that was the first thing we were absolutely looking for. The second thing was property values. At the time, in the late 80s, it was just one of those things where the market was kind of hot, so we kind of got caught up in that bandwagon a little bit. So I think property values, and of course, people would say, obviously, look at the taxes. So the property values and the taxes go hand in hand because that's what affects that mill rate. You always need a certain amount of money to run the community, and depending upon your property value, that's how the mill rates get set. So I would say those three things are what I would tout. As much as we complain about our taxes, we're 144th in tax load on our per capita in the state of Connecticut. 144th out of 169. So as much as we feel that we're overtaxed, we're not according to the statistics.
Mr. McNally, you get 90 seconds to talk about the top 3 reasons you would tell people they should consider moving here to Montville.
Sure. So again, I have to agree with the mayor. The first one would be our schools. We have some of the best school systems in the area. The second thing would be the people. Montville is a great community. The people are really close-knit. They look after each other. Doesn't matter what it is, people come together, and it's great. The other thing is the location. Again, we're in a great location. We're between Norwich, East Lyme, and New London, which is where a lot of people are working now at EB and Pfizer's and such. And then the other part would be the affordability. Our mill rate is believe it or not, pretty good for the area. So all 4 of those things make it a wonderful place to live. Thank you.
Anything further, May? Get another 30 seconds.
Yeah, I won't need 30, but I'll tell you the memories are not what it used to be. Try to remember all these facts and figures. It's a little difficult, but our adjusted tax levy per capita, we're 148th out of 169. We're 144th in per capita income. And our equalized net grand list per capita is 142nd, which means that we're kind of a poorer community in terms of what our grand list is worth, but our tax rate is still reasonable and right up there. So, right up there in a good way, competitive way. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley, have any questions left for Mr. McNally?
Yes.
All right.
Would you consider supporting a recreational center for the teenagers of Montville?
Absolutely, yes. It's one of my things that I'm looking forward to doing. We have what we call a community center, but it's really not a community center. It's locked out during most of the time during the day because there's students in there. There's not a lot of activities or stuff to do in there. I would like to see down the road that we get what they call a real community center, somewhere where the youth, the elderly, and everybody in town would get together. Obviously, it's not something that we can just go out and afford to do, but it's something that we should work towards with grants, put money aside, et cetera. But we should have a place that everybody in this town can meet. We don't have a town green. We don't have any other area where people socialize. Everything's kind of separated. You have your soccer club over here, different things over there. There's not a place where everybody comes together, so it's something that we definitely need to have. Thank you.
And Mayor McDaniel, have you explored the idea of a recreational center?
Sure, and again, the community center, such that it is really not what I would call a true community center. But we made that the best we could right now so that we were able to start trying to get grant funding for that. If you don't have something in name, they're not just going to give you money to go build something new, unfortunately. So we tried to start with this, and then if we had to raise it or renovate it, we could hopefully do so. But that allowed us to start getting some grant money. It also allowed us to get our Youth Service Bureau off Route 32, which was a dangerous place to have a youth center, I think. So glad we got that out of there. Unfortunately, you know what? When we went out to a referendum for this in the past, the people turned it down. They turned down going out to bond to do a true community center. Would it be nice to have? You betcha. If we can find somebody to pay for it, love to have it.
Again, another 30 seconds, Mr. McNally.
Again, I'd agree that the youth center was a great move. In fact, we were able to take a blighted town property and sell it, and it's been renovated, and now it's on the tax rolls. It's a beautiful business for the town of Montville, so that was a good move. But again, we definitely need to plan for the future for a new updated community center. Thanks.
And on that topic, before we move to another question, kind of related topic, I'm not as familiar with Montville. Some towns are highly bonded and will have difficulty expanding with any more projects. You guys, I'm sure know the budget and such. As mayor, what kind of status is Montville in as far as debt and the ability to be able to have the money to borrow to do infrastructure projects such as that? Mayor, if you could take a minute to kind of give your assessment of where you think the town stands, and then we'll hear from Mr. McNally.
Sure. So when I first came here in 2012 as mayor, our long-term debt was at $46.2 million. Right now, we're at $32.1 million, but we just added 10 for the new project, so we're kind of back up into the 40s. As a percentage of the town's resources and budget, we're not in horrible shape. The town could probably afford some more long-term debt if they had the appetite to do so. We got a good bond rating from the Standards & Poor's when we went out to do our bonding because of the management practices and management that has been in place. There's some great quotes in their analysis, which I'm going to run out of time, so I won't be able to share it for you because she's getting ready to hold up her 15. But Standard & Poor's says, in our view, Montville's debt and contingent liability profile is very strong. So that being said by Standard & Poor's, I think, again, if there were the appetite for it, the town could probably support it.
Okay. From your perspective on the chairmanship of the council, Mr. McNally.
Sure, absolutely. So I do agree with him on that. The road bonding was the $10 million was being borrowed over a few year period, so we haven't taken the full $10 million out yet, even though it was approved. So it's not quite on our books yet as a full $10 million in debt. When I took over in 2017, we had about a 14% in our general fund, reserve fund of about $8.8 million. Currently, it's about almost 15%, about $9.6 million. So we've grown the reserve fund. There is money there. We have a great bond rating. And again, if the residents of Montville chose to go out to bond for additional projects, I think the money's there and that we're able to handle it. I believe in 2 years we have 2 other bonds that are coming off, which will put us in even a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question begins with you, Mr. McNally, and it's from Lily Carice.
Montville doesn't appear to have as many community events as some neighboring towns. How would you attract and promote more town events?
Great question. I think Montville does have a lot of events. I just don't know that they're well advertised. We do a ton of stuff. We have Trick or Trunk coming up this weekend. There's Montville, what are they calling it now? Basically food thing that's coming Saturday to benefit the veterans. Taste of Montville. There's events almost every weekend. So I think we do have the events. It's just a matter of marketing it better to get people to come out. And again, I'm not an expert on how to do that, but it's one of those things that we need to do a better job at and work at. Thank you.
Mayor McDaniel?
Yeah, I think Tom's right. There are a lot of events that go under the radar. I have every day when you walk through the foyer between the double doors into Town Hall, there's a big bulletin board there, and there's 3 or 4 things every weekend listed up there. How we get that word out a little better, I think with our revamped website, we should be able to use that to our advantage to try to get that message out, and perhaps tweet blasts or some other. I'm not good with the social media stuff because I'm old, but I'm trying, and we'll be learning to do some of that. So maybe that's a way that we can blast some messages out to people to get them more involved in some of the events. That there are a lot of things that are going on, and some not town sponsored per se. They're church sponsored or they're nonprofit sponsored. But yeah, there's always something.
Anything further, Mr. McNally?
Yeah, I agree. The website that we currently have is not user-friendly. In fact, it doesn't work very well with your cell phones because of the way it's formatted. We were able to put $25,000 aside this year. It's being revamped as we speak. So hopefully that'll be something that'll attract people to go to these events. We do a very good job listing all the events on it, but we're just not getting the word out there. And I think part of it's just because it's not user-friendly. So hopefully that will help it a little bit.
Okay, the next question is to Mayor McDaniel, and it's from Zoe Melton.
What would your top priorities be if elected?
Well, I think right now our top priorities would be to continue to try to diversify the tax base by getting some commercial development, more commercial development into town. I'd really love to see something happen at the drive-in property. That property has been languishing since I moved here, almost 30 years ago. So it's time for something to happen over there, and I wish it would. So hopefully the development of the commercial area on Route 32 is going to help us. Roger and Linda Phillips are doing a great job on the other side of town, so we'd like to continue to help support their activities. Again, I think we need to be diligent and make sure that we're properly positioning ourselves for the future. With the EB workforce coming in and Pfizer starting to now expand again, we want to make sure that we have the proper housing and educational resources available for all the workers that are going to need to come in here. They have way more jobs than they can find workers for. And we need to, I mean, we're taking advantage of that now with a bunch of housing studies and things that we're doing. But our plan of conservation and development is due this year. It's done every 10 years. This year, that will be done. And we need to focus on the plan of the POCD to make sure that that aligns with our future values.
Thank you. And you get 90 seconds to talk about what your top priorities would be if elected mayor.
Thank you. So same as his, unfortunately, is we need to stabilize the tax base by bringing in development. It's one of the things we need to continue to keep working on. One of the other issues that we have in the problem in Montville is we need to keep working on our school system, on the infrastructure. For too many years, it's went unfunded. So we have a ton of issues in the town school system that need to be addressed. I believe it's about $15 million worth of capital projects that need to be paid for. We've earmarked about $1 million this year and last year towards those. So we have to keep working with the school board to make sure that these buildings are maintained to what their standards should be. And the last thing is we have an issue in the town with the fire departments. So we need to work with the paid staff and the volunteer staff and the chiefs to figure out a way to staff the town better. Some of the weekends we're having trouble getting coverage. It's not a problem just in Montville, it's a problem in the state of Connecticut, but it's something that we need to address in the future. Thank you.
Mayor?
Sure, Tom's certainly right about the firefighters, and it's not even just Connecticut, it's nationally. It's a problem that's happening everywhere. So, yeah, I agree with him that's also a focus, and in fact, we're having a meeting with the chiefs tomorrow to try to look at some other positive ways we can do that as well. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing is that we got to just position the town for the future, make sure that we're able to take advantage of the opportunities that are coming before us. And the opportunities lie in the manufacturing sector right now. And we might need to make sure that we have the workforce housing available for those people who want to come and work here.
Yeah, and you brought up a topic I wanted to get to, Mr. McNally, before we turn back to student questions, which is how do you see the situation with volunteer firefighter service right now in Montville? As you said, it's been a challenge in many towns. How do you see things stand now, and what are some ideas you might have working with the council if elected to try to make sure we have adequate coverage of our fire service?
Great, thanks, Paul. Yeah,
And you have 60 seconds, I'm sorry.
Okay. So we have great volunteer firefighters in this town, but unfortunately, like everything else, it's going by the wayside. We need to find a way to promote them and to make them feel more needed. We need to find a way to incentivize them to participate more, whether that be financially or in other ways. But the thing is, we need to start the conversations. It's been going on for many years now. It's just kind of one of those things that nobody talks about, but we need to get them all in the same room and see what we can do to fix that. Again, it's not just in the town of Montville, it's state and nationally. Volunteerism is just not what it used to be. So we have to look at other alternatives, possibly adding paid staff, which is another option. But that's a delicate balance because too many paid staff start affecting the volunteers coming out. So it's one of those things we have to work with the chiefs on to figure that out. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe again, you said this is a big topic for your town, all towns.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, since we had the issue with the Federal Labor Standards Act about what these guys can do and can't do and get paid for and not paid for, it certainly kind of drove everything to the forefront. And unfortunately, it affected our ability to have a good part-time staff, which we were utilizing well and was working very well for the town of Montville. The chiefs have been meeting. Unfortunately, they don't have the answer at this time either. I think it's going to have to be a combination of some new staff and some new ways of kind of doing business. And we're going to have to look at that. And I don't want to make any promises or anything here because some of these guys are union and I'm in the middle of contract negotiation with them, so I can't really say too much about what's going on with that. But again, there's a meeting that's going to be held tomorrow. That's going to be part of the conversation, certainly. And the other thing is, it's really the EMS calls that we're having trouble staffing. When there's a fire, thank goodness, all hands on deck. Everybody kind of comes out and does their thing. But the initial response, we're not getting what the fire service really wants, which is a 2 in and 2 out, 2 guys inside the building, 2 guys outside to make for safety. When you only have 4 guys on in town during the day, you can't get them all there at the same time if they're out on an ambulance call.
Thank you. You get another 30 seconds on this topic.
Yeah, it's true. The way we've been doing things isn't working anymore, so we do have to look at all alternatives. Some of the things, like the mayor had said, a lot of the calls are for EMS, and if you look at some of the call volume, it's to one place in town, a nursing home, and a lot of the calls are not emergency calls, so it's one of those things that possibly they need to call a private provider for, where they're not using our emergency staff for that. But what we did in the 70s isn't working. We don't have guys hanging out at the firehouse drinking beer and waiting for a call. It's totally changed. So we have to definitely change the ways we're doing things as a town.
Thank you. Next question begins, and we'll, after this, probably move to final statements. But Mayor McDaniel, I would just like to ask both candidates. You've chosen to be a Democrat. Ms. McNally chosen to be a Republican. I was wondering if you could talk about what it is about the party ideology that made you be a Democrat, and how might that be reflected in your continuing leadership of Montville?
Me first?
Yes, you go first.
Well, you know what? A long time ago, I was a Republican, believe it or not. I came from the town of Farmington, where I was raised was a very conservative community. Everybody was a Republican there. I don't think there were any Democrats in Farmington at the time. When I came down to southeastern Connecticut and I went to a liberal arts college, I kind of became a little more liberal in my thinking. I'm a conservative, a fiscal conservative, but I'm a social liberal. I think people should have the right to choose, to have some of their social liberties. I don't think at the local level there's that huge of a difference between a Democrat and a Republican. At the end of the day, again, we're here to fill potholes and cut trees and make sure our kids have textbooks and computers and things they need. You know what? We're not out, cutting each other's heads off about, what happened in the Ukraine and things like that. That's just not what we're about here. What we're about here is serving these people in this community. And these people all came out here tonight because we service them. I mean, we serve them. That's what we're here for. We answer to them. Every day when I come into work, somebody comes in and has a question or a problem to try to help them with. And I think Republican or Democrat, that's what we're here for.
Thank you. Mr. McNally, so, why have you chosen to be a Republican? How might that be reflected in your leadership if elected mayor?
So the values of Republican are with the fiscal responsibility. I think we've already proven that in our first 2 years in office here. Again, on a national level, that doesn't trickle down here to the local level, but fiscal responsibilities is important. Pro Second Amendment. So their ideals are just in line with what I believe in. Again, on a local level, I don't think it's as important as a national level, but we're all here to do what needs to be done for the town of Montville. It's not so much Republican versus Democrat once the elections are over. It's all about what we can do for the town of Montville. Thank you.
And any final thoughts? You got 30 seconds if you so choose.
Again, I agree. And I'm not just for the Second Amendment, which I am. I'm for all the amendments. When you swear an oath of office to do the best you can, you swear to uphold all the laws, whether you like those laws or you don't like those laws. And there have been many times that maybe I don't agree with something, but my job is to uphold all the laws and ordinances of the federal, of the Constitution, the state Constitution, its state laws, and the town ordinances. So with that said, again, I don't think there's that much difference at the local level.
All right, thank you. All right, we're coming up on the hour, and we're going to move to final statements. Each candidate has a minute to sum up, and by a coin flip, we'll begin with Mr. McNally.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Day and the Board of Ed for sponsoring tonight's debate. In 12 days, voters will have an important decision to make. Either stay the course and continue the progress a Republican council has made over the last 2 years with me as the chairman, or return to the days of big tax increases, 30-year-old school buses, nepotism, antiquated regulations, and no vision for our town's future. Has the mayor done the job he's elected to do? Where is the economic development? Why isn't he working harder to bring the Pequot Mohegan Fund back to the town? Does he oversee and meet with department heads to streamline those departments to become more effective and efficient? What about the numerous ongoing lawsuits? Only my allotted time prevents me from stating more. I humbly ask that you vote for me November 5th so that we continue the progress we've made here in the town of Montville. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor McDaniel, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Well, folks, I don't know how many minds were made up tonight. As I think most of you came in to support your candidate. But I like to use the rest of my time to tell you why I'm running for mayor again. People are still hurting out there. Southeastern Connecticut has been the last region to try to emerge from the recession, and we never really crawled all the way out of it. I know that all of us are having a hard time making ends meet in this economy, and I know I am both at home and in business. But there is reason for optimism. Like I said earlier, Montville has added the most commercial space in the 21-town COG region at 268,000 square feet. Pfizer is again beginning to pick up, and Electric Boat has more hiring opportunities than people to fill them. That is why my active participation in the Joint Land Use Study Commission and the Eastern Connecticut Workforce Investment Board is so important. I am able to keep Montville engaged on a regional basis to make sure we are not left behind. So together we will have to find creative ways to keep things moving forward without bankrupting our citizens. Our children's education is critical to our future. I believe that there are workable solutions that will continue to enhance our children's learning experiences without creating a hardship for taxpayers. It has always been my goal to see Montville schools setting the standard for education.
I got to
not
ask you to
measuring
wrap up,
excellence.
Mayor, just to be fair.
What's that?
It was a minute. If
Oh,
you
I'm
could
sorry,
wrap up.
I didn't see you there, I was reading. Okay. Again, I ask for your vote on November 5th. Thank you for all your support.
Thank you. And we give applause for all the candidates. All right, that concludes our event. Thank you guys for coming out, and hopefully more people get a chance to see this discussion on theday.com. Good night.